very emotional weekend with the funeral of Detective Jonathan Diller on Long Island. Jonathan Diller, as you know, was murdered by a career criminal last week, a criminal who should never have been on the street. Nobody can make an argument that he should have been. There's his one-year-old baby, okay? And this child will never know his father. And his widow, 29-year-old Stephanie Diller, is obviously devastated, but delivered a eulogy to her husband, which was magnificent. But in that time, in the body of the eulogy, most of it was spent on describing Jonathan and their relationship. But she did depart to scold politicians in New York State. Roll it.
It's been 2 years and 2 months since Detective Rivera and Detective Mora made the ultimate sacrifice, just like my husband, Jonathan Diller. Dominique Rivera stood in front of all the elected officials present today pleading for change. That change never came, and now my son will grow up without his father. I will grow old without my husband, and his parents have to say goodbye to their child. How many more police officers and how many more families need to make the ultimate sacrifice before we start protecting them?
And New York State and city does not protect innocent people. They don't protect the police or their residents. They flat out do not protect them. No two sides to the story. The progressive philosophy, and progressives control this state, is that criminals, even violent criminals, need to be treated, not punished. And I will prove that in a moment. You cannot have a just society without confronting injustice. It's impossible. Yet the progressive politicians and the media in New York that backs them up, all right, they don't care about injustice, right? Because they believe that the whole justice system is rotten and biased against Black Americans. That is the genesis of all of this racial politics. Now, 80% of arrests in New York City are not fully adjudicated. What does that mean? The guy who killed, and I mean, I'm not going to say allegedly because there's witnesses to it, who killed Detective Diller, and he was promoted posthumously, the detective. His name Guy Rivera, okay? He's 34 years old. He's been arrested 21 times, served 2 prison terms. He's a drug dealer, okay? But get this. He's arrested 21 times. 19 of those arrests went nowhere because the DAs in New York City, with the exception of Staten Island, don't care about prosecuting guys like Rivera. So he can go out, sell heroin on the street, fentanyl on the street, beat you to a pulp, do anything he wants, and get away with it totally. They put him away twice, but for short periods of time. Now get this. Last April, 2023, Rivera is arrested for carrying an illegal gun. He's out. The case has not been adjudicated. And the city of New York is stonewalling us and won't tell us why Rivera was released after being arrested with a legal gun. Do you realize that the state of New York has spent tens of millions of dollars prosecuting Donald Trump on ridiculous stuff, and then they turn around and tell the people of New York they can't afford to hire any more police? You realize that? Talk about corruption. My God. And this boy will never, ever know his father. And the reason this happened is that New York City and state politicians allow violent criminals to roam the streets of the city and state, armed and dangerous, time after time after time. No contrition, never saying they're sorry, and they never change. And who backs them up? The New York Times ran the funeral story of the dead police officer on page 21. Newsday, the newspaper of Long Island, gave it 2 pages and neglected to put in the soundbite I played you from Stephanie Diller chastising New York's politicians. Newsday couldn't put that in there. Both the Times and Newsday and the New York Daily News are far left operations. They allow the politicians, they encourage the progressives to do the insane things they do. All of these people, if you want to use a cliche, have blood on their hands. All of them. Because it goes on and on and on and on. Perhaps the most powerful politician in New York State is a man named Carl Heastie. Carl Heastie. He is the Assembly Speaker in Albany, and he wields tremendous power. If you go up against Heastie, he can cut off your money, he can make your life miserable. So the leftists in Albany do what he says. Heastie admits flat out he is not going to enforce the laws of the state. Go.
I just don't believe raising penalties is ever a deterrent on crime. There's already things in current law to deal with people who assault other people.
That's not true, because the laws on the books are not being enforced, and Heastie well knows it, because that's the way Heastie wants it. So he is from the Bronx. And in the Bronx, you have many, many, many poor people. That's Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez's turf. Those poor people see life differently, even though they're being brutalized every single day by criminals. You see it differently. I'll get into that some other time. Now, in New York City, we reported on a man named Manuel Pagan, major narcotics dealer. He was arrested with 20,000 fentanyl pills. 20,000. How many people that can kill? You do. All right? You know what he got? He pled guilty because they found him with the pills. You know what he got? 2 years in prison. And he'll be out in a year and a half. 2 years. 20,000 pills. Fentanyl. Poison. Poison. Okay, how about the 2 men who beat up the police officers in the Bronx on November 13th, 2023? Their case hasn't even been assigned yet. Okay, so it's April, right? That's 4 months plus. They're due back in court June 3rd. Nothing's going to happen to them. Push it back, push it back. Why? You got it on videotape. That should have taken 3 weeks. Court date, bang. Doesn't want to do it. They don't want to do it. Even if you beat up a cop or kill a cop. It's so unbelievable. So now you present all of this to the President of the United States. He is well aware. Well, that might be exaggerating it. He's been told about the violence in America's cities. And it's primarily driven by narcotics and guns because the drug gangs are armed. Here's what his press secretary said last week. Go.
This shooting is yet another painful reminder of the toll of gun violence, that what it's doing to inflict on families and our communities and our nation. And that's why the president signed more than 24 executive actions. That's why we're able to pass a bipartisan agreement to deal with the gun violence that we're seeing in this country. Obviously, more work needs to be done.
So it's always gun violence, not gun criminal violence. It's the guns that are doing it, not the criminals. And we've heard that a million times in the Democratic Party. That is their line. And it's total malarkey. If President Biden cared at all about the issue, which he does not, and this comes under a long line of things he doesn't care about, the southern border being number one. If he cared about criminals using guns to hurt other Americans. There's an amazing amount of things that he could do about it. He does nothing. He didn't even talk about it. He didn't even call, as you know, the family, the Diller family on Long Island, when he was 35 miles away in Radio City yucking it up with Obama and Clinton collecting money. They didn't care about it. Because the left, the far left, doesn't want to prosecute crimes. Because they feel the justice system is racist. That's what Heastie is all about. Heastie is, whites control it, so I'm going to break it down. I'm going to blow it up. He wants to blow up the entire system. He's well on his way in New York.